In a pointed new interview that's already being dissected frame by frame, Kelsey Mitchell directly addressed Sheryl Swoopes' criticism of Caitlin Clark, and did so with the kind of fire that only comes from living through years of silence, struggle, and rebuilding. This wasn't some vague, PR-sanitized offense. Mitchell called out the bitterness in Swoopes' remarks, made it clear Clark's presence is not up for debate, and drew a hard line in the sand. This new era of women's basketball is here to stay, with or without the approval of the league's old guard. Swoopes' comments, laced with condescension toward Clark's rise, may have flown under the radar weeks ago. Not anymore. Mitchell's response reframed the entire narrative. She made it personal, pointing her own loyalty to Indiana, staying through years of irrelevance and rebuilds, and now watching her teammate Clark bring national attention and new energy to a league that's long fought for the spotlight.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
To dismiss that is not just short-sighted, it's destructive. And Mitchell wasn't afraid to say it. There was no room for vague professionalism in this interview. Aaliyah Boston and Lexi Hull, both instrumental pieces of Indiana's climb, were included in the picture Mitchell painted, a team growing together through mutual respect and unshakable trust. This isn't about a single rookie getting headlines. It's about a group of women building something real. Mitchell emphasized that what's happening in Indiana isn't a fluke. It's not hype. It's a shift, and undermining that because of pride or jealousy only exposes the fragility of those still clinging to past status. Mitchell's message was loud and clear. This is a team, not a platform for legacy players to air their insecurities. Swoopes may be a legend, but even legends don't get a free pass to belittle the next generation, especially not when that generation is dragging the entire league into primetime relevancy. Mitchell's choice to speak now at this moment shows exactly the kind of leader she is. Fiercely loyal, unapologetically honest, and not afraid to confront what everyone else is too polite to say out loud. The tension in the WNBA has been building all season. On one side, you got veterans from the old guard who've made it clear they're not ready to pass the torch without a fight. On the other, you've got a new wave of talent. Players who are not only changing the game on the court, but shifting how the league is perceived off of it. And caught right in the middle of that storm, Caitlin Clark. But this time, Clark didn't have to speak for herself. Because Kelsey Mitchell, longtime Indiana Fever standout and one of the most respected veterans in the league, stepped up and did not hold back. In a fiery new interview, Mitchell came out swinging. And the target? None other than WNBA legend Sheryl Swoopes. This wasn't just a casual disagreement. It wasn't a difference of opinion about play styles or media attention. This was a direct response to Swoopes' dismissive remarks about Clark, remarks that downplayed her accomplishments, questioned her impact, and added fuel to the growing divide between league veterans and rising stars. And Mitchell? She was not having it. With the kind of conviction that only comes from living through the struggle, Mitchell laid it all out. She didn't mince words. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She called for respect, not just for Caitlin Clark, but for the evolution of the league itself. And in doing so, she delivered what can only be described as one of the most important interviews of the WNBA season. Because this wasn't just about defending a teammate. It was about confronting the toxic jealousy that's been simmering beneath the surface. Let's be clear, Kelsey Mitchell knows what it means to grind. She's been with Indiana through the lowest of lows. She stayed when things were tough. She played through years when the team had no national attention, no packed arenas, and no one expecting anything from them. And now that there's finally momentum, now that the Fever are relevant again thanks to Caitlin Clark's arrival, Mitchell isn't about to let bitterness and disrespect hijack the progress. She said it loud. Caitlin Clark is not the enemy. She's not here to erase anyone's legacy. She's here to build one. And that message, it cuts through all the noise. Mitchell used her platform to call for a shift. She addressed the real issue, that some former players, like Swoopes, have been more focused on gatekeeping than growing the game. And in a league that's always fought for respect, that kind of behavior is destructive. It creates division. It alienates fans. It sends a wrong message to the next generation. Mitchell made it clear that real leadership isn't about tearing people down. It's about lifting them up, especially when they're doing something that's good for the sport. Because whether people want to admit it or not, Caitlin Clark has changed the WNBA. She's brought in fans. She's sold jerseys. She's filled arenas. She's given the league a level of visibility it's never had before. That's not hype. That's impact. And Mitchell gets it. She knows that Clark's presence doesn't take away from what other players have done. It adds to it. It's a continuation of the work, not a replacement of it. She praised Clark not just as a player, but as a teammate. She talked about their chemistry, their friendship, and their shared goals. She made it crystal clear. This isn't a rivalry. It's a partnership, and it's one that's reshaping Indiana's future. And while Swoopes and others have been fixated on hierarchy, Mitchell's been focused on unity. She emphasized the importance of team, of building something lasting, not just chasing headlines. She even hinted at taking less money if it means keeping the core of the Fever together. That's not just loyalty. That's leadership. Mitchell's interview also served as a subtle but powerful call-out of how toxic the culture can become when progress is met with jealousy, when legends feel threatened by growth instead of proud of it, when they forget that every generation is supposed to open doors, not close them behind them. And let's be real, this isn't just about Swoopes. Mitchell's words were aimed at a mindset, a pattern, a refusal by some in the league's inner circle to acknowledge that the game is evolving and that it should. She challenged that. She exposed the insecurity behind it. And she flipped the script, because when Kelsey Mitchell speaks, people listen. She's earned that right, not with tweets or media sound bites, but with years of staying loyal through Indiana's darkest days. She's put in the work. She's earned her voice. And now she's using it to build not just a team, but a culture. The culture she's promoting, it's about respect. It's about support. It's about making room for players like Clark and honoring those who came before. It's about both. She's not erasing the past. She's calling for a future that actually reflects the values that WNBA claims to stand for: equality, unity, and growth. And in a league that's trying to reach new heights, that kind of leadership is exactly what's needed. Mitchell's stance is bold. It's emotional. It's personal. But more than anything, it's necessary, because someone had to say it. Someone had to call out the energy that's been dragging the conversation backward. Someone had to defend Clark without making it about clout or headlines. And Mitchell did it with clarity, class, and strength. And now, the fans are rallying behind her. Across social media, the response to Mitchell's interview has been overwhelmingly supportive. People are tired of the negativity. They're tired of seeing Clark attacked for raising the bar. They're tired of the gatekeeping. And Mitchell just gave them the rallying cry they needed. The message is clear. This league doesn't have to be divided. It doesn't have to be a battle between old school and new wave. It can be a collaboration, a passing of the torch, a celebration of growth. And if Indiana Fever is any example, that future is already happening. Mitchell, Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Grace Berger, Lexi Hull. This team isn't just winning games. They're building something real, something rooted in respect and shared purpose. And that's how dynasties start. Not just with talent, but with trust. Mitchell made sure people understood that. And her words have already shifted the conversation. So here's the takeaway. Support doesn't have an age limit. Leadership isn't threatened by success. It celebrates it. And real legacy? It's not just about what you did. It's about what you helped others do. Kelsey Mitchell just showed us all what that looks like. So what do you think? Was she right to call out Sheryl Swoopes? Is this the cultural shift the WNBA desperately needs? And more importantly, are we finally ready to stop tearing down players who bring in the spotlight and start appreciating what that spotlight means? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're here for real talk, unfiltered drama, and the moments that actually matter in women's basketball, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Because over here, we don't just recap, we reckon with the truth. And we're just getting started. And you know what's wild? It's not just what she said, it's how she said it. Mitchell didn't need to scream. She didn't throw insults or pander to social media hype. She stood firm, spoke from her truth, and delivered something the WNBA desperately needed. A clear call for unity, growth, and respect. Let's not pretend like this league hasn't been dealing with a messy undercurrent all season. The resentment, it's been bubbling. The bitterness from past legends toward Caitlin Clark has been making headlines almost weekly. And whether it's subtle jabs in interviews or not-so-subtle shade on social media, it's all feeding into this nasty culture war that's suffocating the league's potential. Then here comes Kelsey Mitchell, who doesn't just step into the conversation. She redefines it. She didn't ask for anyone's permission. She didn't wait to be invited into the debate. She just told the truth. That Caitlin Clark doesn't owe anyone an apology for being a generational talent. That bringing attention to the league shouldn't make her a target. And that the energy being used to tear her down would be a whole lot more powerful if it was used to lift the league up. Mitchell made it crystal clear. This isn't about egos. It's about evolution. And the way she framed it completely flipped the dynamic. Because if Kelsey Mitchell, who's fought through irrelevance, who stayed loyal to a team that's just now started to get its shine, is praising Clark's impact, then what exactly are Sheryl Swoopes and others mad about? That's the part that hit hardest. Mitchell has every reason to be bitter. She spent years grinding in a league that overlooked her, in a franchise that the media ignored, through losing seasons and little recognition. She was here when there were empty seats and zero TV coverage. But now, with Caitlin Clark in the league, there are sellouts, national broadcasts, headlines, and instead of being jealous, she's grateful. That's leadership. Mitchell made it clear that the growth of one player is not the downfall of another, that the success of Caitlin Clark doesn't erase what the legends before her did. It honors it. It builds on it. It brings in more eyes, more sponsors, more fans. It's not subtraction. It's expansion. So why are some of the legends acting like the game's being taken away from them? That's what Mitchell pushed back on. And she did it with grace and power. She didn't just defend Clark. She exposed a cultural divide. One that's less about basketball and more about insecurity. Because let's be honest, real legends know how to pass the torch. They know how to build the next generation. They know that legacy isn't about being the only one who ever mattered. It's about being part of something that keeps going. And that's what Mitchell is trying to protect. You can tell she sees something special forming in Indiana. Not just a good season, not just a run, but a foundation. One that includes Clark, Boston, Hull herself. A group that isn't just playing together, but building something together. And the bond she described between her and Clark, that wasn't a PR stunt. That was real respect, communication, and shared ambition. She said it herself, they want the same thing. They want greatness. And they're willing to sacrifice ego for that. Mitchell even said she'd take less money to keep the core of this team intact. Let that sink in. In a league where contracts are shorter, endorsements are still growing, and players are constantly balancing legacy and financial security, Mitchell is ready to sacrifice for something bigger than herself. That's not just rare. That's revolutionary. Because this league has been crying out for culture changers, for players who don't just want to be stars, but want to build a dynasty. And that's what Mitchell is setting up. She's turning Indiana into a blueprint for what the next era of the WNBA could be. A team-first culture built on friendship, loyalty, and shared vision. Contrast that with what we've seen from the other side. Sheryl Swoopes and other members of the old guard aren't using their platforms to uplift the league. They're using them to gatekeep it, to invalidate new stars, to undermine progress. And for what? A misplaced sense of ownership? Mitchell's words expose that hypocrisy. She made it clear that being first doesn't mean you get to be the only one who matters. That the game belongs to the players now, not just the ones from 20 years ago. And it's not about age. It's about attitude. There are plenty of legends who've shown nothing but love for this new wave, who've supported Clark, Boston, Reese, and others without resentment. But the loudest voices haven't been those legends. They've been the ones stuck in the past. And Mitchell put them on notice. The league is moving forward, with or without them. And it's because of players like Caitlin Clark, yes, but also because of players like Kelsey Mitchell who stand beside her, not behind her, who see progress as a shared victory, not a threat. That's how dynasties start. That's how culture shifts. You build a team, not just a talent, but a belief. You build trust. You build chemistry. And then you win together. Mitchell's message is clear. If you're not helping that, get out of the way. Because Indiana isn't here to play the same old WNBA politics. They're here to change it from the inside, with leadership, with loyalty, and with respect. Mitchell's interview was more than a response. It was a statement of values, a vision for what this league could be if people let go of their egos and focus on the bigger picture. And if the Fever can keep that core together, if the league supports this new energy instead of resisting it, we're looking at something historic. Let's lock in, because what Kelsey Mitchell did wasn't just an interview. It was a cultural reset. It's one thing to defend a teammate. That happens every day in sports. But what Mitchell did went way deeper than just clapping back at a bad take. She reframed the entire conversation around what it means to lead, what it means to grow the league, and what kind of energy the WNBA needs if it wants to keep rising. She didn't just defend Caitlin Clark. She challenged the entire mindset that's been holding the lead back, and she did it without bitterness, without throwing anyone under the bus, without spinning herself as some martyr. She spoke as someone who's lived through irrelevance. Who knows what it feels like to play in front of half-empty arenas? Who stayed loyal through losing season after losing season, waiting for the league to catch up to her work ethic. Now that the spotlight's finally here, she's not guarding it. She's sharing it. That's what shook people. Because when Sheryl Swoopes came out with her dismissive comments about Clark, comments that, let's be honest, dripped with entitlement, there was this unspoken tension. Like, are we really going to pretend Caitlin hasn't changed the landscape? Are we really going to ignore the numbers? The packed stadiums? The millions of new fans tuning in for the first time ever? That's not hype. That's not media bias. That's impact. And Mitchell, in her calm, powerful way, said exactly what fans were thinking. You don't have to tear down the future, protect the past. Because Caitlin Clark didn't take anything from anyone. She didn't demand the spotlight. She earned it. With her game, her grit, and her ability to bring people into the WNBA who previously didn't care. And now, suddenly, she's the one being blamed, dismissed, disrespected. Mitchell wasn't having it. She said enough, and the way she said it hit different. Not just because she's a respected voice, but because she's the perfect person to say it. Kelsey Mitchell isn't some recent media darling or overnight sensation. She's been putting in the work for years, with barely any praise to show for it. She's gone through the grind. She knows what it's like to have your value questioned, to be overlooked, to carry a franchise without headlines. So when she says that Caitlin deserves respect, she means it. And when she says this new generation of stars is not a threat, but the natural progression of the league's growth, that message lands. It lands because Mitchell isn't just talking about Clark. She's talking about what it means to lead with humility and grace, even when you've earned the right to flex. She could have made the moment about herself. She could have said, where was this energy when I was putting up numbers for Indiana in losing seasons? But she didn't. Instead, she used her platform to call for togetherness, to push for a league culture that values legacy and evolution. She reminded us all that greatness isn't a zero-sum game. And that kind of leadership, that's what separates good players from foundational ones. Because Mitchell isn't just balling for herself. She's building something in Indiana. And she knows the only way to build a dynasty is by checking your ego at the door. That's why her bond with Caitlin Clark matters. That's why her willingness to take a pay cut to keep the core team intact matters. She's not just betting on Clark. She's betting on the culture they're creating. A culture where veterans don't bully rookies. They mentor them. Where stars don't compete for attention. They collaborate. Where success doesn't come from tearing others down, but from rising together. And you can feel it in Indiana. You see it in the way they play. The way they talk about each other in interviews. The chemistry between Mitchell, Clark, Boston, Hull, it's not just strategy. It's sisterhood. That's what sets them apart. And it's why Kelsey's comments hit a nerve. Because they weren't just calling out Swoopes. They were calling out a mentality. A mentality that says the only way to protect your legacy is to deny someone else's. A mentality that says new stars have to earn their place by staying quiet and small. A mentality that sees change as a threat instead of an opportunity. And Mitchell said, no more. This is a league that's finally getting the attention it deserves. That's finally seeing growth in real time. That's finally being talked about, not just during playoffs, but all season long. And you think now is the time to start infighting? Now is when we throw shade at the rookies? Now is when we cling to resentment instead of celebrating evolution? Mitchell shut that down because she knows what happens when the focus shifts from progress to petty. She's lived it, and now that the league is turning a corner, she's using her voice to make sure it keeps going the right direction. Let's be clear. This interview wasn't just about defending Caitlin Clark. It was about setting the tone for a league that desperately needs unity. Mitchell's message was simple but powerful. We're better together. And that message has legs. Because fans are tired of the drama. They're tired of the passive-aggressive shade. They're tired of seeing the league's best talent get dragged by people who should be supporting them. And finally, someone stepped up and said what needed to be said. Respect is not a limited resource. Legacy doesn't need to be gatekept. And leadership is about lifting others while you climb, not kicking them off the ladder. Kelsey Mitchell isn't just playing for wins. She's playing for something bigger. And if the league is smart, they'll listen. Because what she's offering isn't just an opinion. It's a roadmap, a blueprint for how the WNBA can evolve without fracturing, how it can honor its history and embrace its future, how it can stop the cycle of jealousy and start the cycle of growth. So now the question is, will the league follow her lead? Will the veterans who feel threatened by new stars take a step back and reflect? Will they realize that mentorship leaves a far bigger legacy than resentment? Will they support the next wave instead of standing in its way? And more importantly, will fans continue to support the players who are building bridges instead of burning them? Because Kelsey Mitchell just gave us all a choice. We can stay stuck in the drama, or we can build something real. We can keep tearing down stars like Clark, or we can celebrate what her rise means for the game. Growth, visibility, respect, future. That's what's on the line here. And Mitchell's made it clear where she stands. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment. Do you agree with Kelsey Mitchell's take? Was her response to Sheryl Swoopes a turning point in the league's cultural conversation? Are you ready for a WNBA that chooses unity over ego? Let us know. Speak up. And if you want more raw, unfiltered breakdowns of the drama shaping the future of basketball, hit that subscribe button. Because over here, we don't just cover the game. We cover the shift. And Kelsey Mitchell? She just shifted everything.